Did you know that the beef you eat produces more greenhouse gases than the car you drive? Did you know that worldwide obesity has tripled since 1975 and so has meat production? Did you know that most of the world's population live in countries where overweight and obesity kills more people than underweight? Did you know that each day 25,000 people, including more than 10,000 children, die from hunger and related causes? Shocking, right? Which is why we need to stop eating for this world and start eating for a better world. Hi everyone, welcome to English for a Better World lesson 2, and today we will look at the world food system and what's wrong with the world food system, and we will also consider what it means to eat for a better world. So let's get right into our lesson, and let's begin with these pictures. Take a good look at these pictures. What story do you think these pictures tell? Well, I think it's not difficult to figure out what story they tell. And in the comment section below, describe the story that these pictures tell. Anyway, by the end of this lesson, you will find out what kind of a story the pictures tell. So let's look at the highlights of our lesson. We will look at the link between food and the planet. Well, you will learn to talk about food and the planet. The grammar is present perfect versus present perfect continuous. And we have an interesting talk. Cows eat better than people do. What an interesting thought, right? So let's begin with the vocabulary of this lesson. Find the odd one out and give reasons. Beef, livestock, soy feed. Malnutrition, nutritional starvation, grains, cattle, legumes, well off, better off, bad off, to give it a try, to persist in doing, to keep doing, elite, masses, peasants. Now let's move on to the vocabulary exercise, which will basically contextualize the vocabulary. We'll show you how these words are used in context. So read the sentences carefully and choose the correct answer. How does what we eat matter? Let's find out by asking a few people about their opinions. So Manal, how does what we eat matter? I've cut down on meat consumption when I found out that global meat production is responsible for 18% of total greenhouse emissions, compared to 13% released by transportation worldwide. Actually, it's even more than this. So Asir, tell us, how does what we eat matter? Now, in 2022, I find it perplexing and dismaying that when there is more food available than ever before, when agricultural yields have increased hugely, when there are 1.5 billion people worldwide classified as obese, 925 million people simply don't have enough to eat. Well, Asher, I totally agree with you. It's actually quite perplexing and shocking as well. Well, Mina, tell us, how does what we eat matter? I don't know how far individual choice will take us in fixing this huge problem. I mean, as long as the problem is structural, I think we should deal with it on that level. Still, when there isn't enough collective action, individual choice is better than nothing. You're right, Mina, and I totally agree with you. Okay, Mina, how does what we eat matter? Globally, 1/3 of the food produced for human consumption is lost, about 1.3 billion tons. Food waste is more a problem in industrialized countries, most often caused by both retailers and consumers throwing perfectly edible foodstuffs into the trash while millions of children go without food every day in the world. It's a crazy situation, isn't it? Now on to our dialogue. Well, listen to 3 people discussing food and the planet and healthy food. So just look at the pictures to give you an idea of what the listening is about. Harmful, hunger, cornucopia, and obesity. Also, read the questions carefully to be able to answer them. Mesa, I have been suffering from constipation for a long while and I simply don't know what to do. What do you suggest? Hatim, what do you usually eat? Mesa, since I'm busy, I usually grab a quick sandwich. Hatim, well, I think it might be a good idea to cut down on fast food. You see, I had a similar problem before, and once I started eating vegetarian food, I got better. So give it a try. Nizar, I totally agree. As a full-blown vegetarian, I have never had such health problems. It's really beyond me why most people persist in eating fast food when they know it's harmful. Mesa, I think the main reason is that in America, fast food industry spends billions of dollars on advertising to get people to eat more fast food. I know how unhealthy fast food is, but as you said, I still keep eating it. Hatim, people have become addicted because the profit-driven food industry has spread it all over the world. Mesa, unfortunately that's true. I've been thinking about quitting it, but I just don't seem to have the time to cook. Speaking of food, how much food is produced worldwide each year? Nazar, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has recently reported that the world already produces enough food to feed 12 billion people. Yet each day, 25,000 people, including more than 10,000 children, die from hunger and related causes. Hatim, this is really insane and inhuman. I have read somewhere that in the United States, for instance, as much as 40% of food worth some 408 billion US dollars is thrown away. So the problem isn't production, but distribution. Now look at these two pictures. Obviously the second one, is about the greenhouse gases produced by livestock. 40% is actually, now we know it's even a little higher than that, maybe 60%. And what about the first picture? What do you see in this first picture? All right, and then finish these sentences. I have never had McDonald's in my life. Points to ponder. What do you think of these quotes? Well, look at the first picture. Scrumptious, delicious, isn't it? Don't dig your grave with your own knife and fork. It's an English proverb. Well, what a thought, right? What about the second one on a diet? What is a diet? A diet is the penalty we pay for exceeding the feed limit. You eat too much, and especially too much unhealthy food, like in the first picture, well, you go on a diet. Now let's move on to the third quote. Vegetarianism is a way of living consciously on the planet. Well, the key word here is living consciously, because meat eating is an unconscious choice. We grow up eating meat, and when you stop eating meat, it's a conscious choice. And the last one, we all love animals. Why do we call some pets and others dinner? It's a good question for those who keep pets and eat meat at the same time. Now to our interesting talk, which is entitled Cows Eat Better Than People Do. Well, before you listen to this talk, and to give you an idea of the talk itself, you can take a look at the pictures and try to figure out what story they tell. And read the questions carefully before you listen. Cows eat better than people do. Every time you eat a hamburger, you are having a relationship with thousands of people you never met. Not just people at the supermarket or fast food restaurant, but possibly World Bank officials in Washington, D.C., and peasants from Central and South America. And many of these people are hungry. The fact is that there is enough food in the world for everyone. But tragically, much of the world's food and land resources are tied up in producing beef and other livestock, food for the well-off, while millions of children and adults suffer from malnutrition and starvation. The mathematics are simple. For every pound of feedlot beef on our plate, an American cow eats 9 pounds of grain and soy feed. In the 1980s, the world grain supply alone was enough to provide every human on the planet with 3,600 calories a day, more than enough to meet everyone's average nutritional requirements. As Francis Moore Lappé, author of Diet for a Small Planet, explains, our food system takes abundant grain, which hungry people can't afford, and shrinks it into meat, which better off people will pay for. Cattle and other livestock eat 70% of the grain produced in the United States. Beef production is linked to increasing poverty in a different way, the switch over from growing food crops to feed crops. In Brazil, half of the basic grains produced are sold as livestock feed, while the majority of the rural poor suffer from malnutrition. The shift from black beans, a basic food crop, to soybeans feeds the beef appetites of the Brazilian elite and foreign importers of Brazilian livestock feed, not Brazil's hungry masses. A study by David Barkin of the Autonomous Metropolitan University in Mexico City found that in Brazil, Colombia, Egypt, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, South Africa, Thailand, and Venezuela, production of meat for the rich has crowded out basic food production for the bad off. The American fast food diet and meat eating habits of the wealthy around the world support a world food system that diverts food resources from the hungry. But we do not have to unknowingly go along for the ride. Choosing to eat a diet lower on the food chain is a way of rejecting our position at the top of what environmental activist Jeremy Rifkin calls the protein ladder. A diet higher in whole grains and legumes and lower in beef and other meat is not just healthier for ourselves, but also contributes to changing this heartless world system that feeds some people and leaves others hungry. Our grammar focus, present perfect continuous. We use the present perfect continuous to show that something started in the past and has continued up until now, for 5 minutes, for 2 weeks, and since Tuesday are all durations which can be used with the present perfect continuous. We can also use the present perfect continuous without a duration such as for 2 weeks. Without the duration, the tense has a more general meaning of lately. We often use the words lately or recently to emphasize this meaning. James has been teaching at the university since June. We have been waiting here for 2 hours. Recently, I have been feeling really tired. Have you been exercising lately? Well, in order to understand this lesson better, go ahead and complete the sentences using present perfect or present perfect continuous. Well, this is the end of our lesson about eating for a better world, and I really hope we can all do that. So let's look at this take-home message. Just answer the questions or think about these questions. What have you learned from this lesson? Have you learned anything about your eating habits from this lesson? How necessary is meat to our health? What has social justice got to do with overconsumption of meat? How did we get here? And the last question is actually very important. It helps you understand how we got here. So let's eat for a better world. See you next week.